Gingin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gene Coltes, presiding member for this Regional Development Assessment Panel. I'll declare the meeting open under Part A of the agenda at 1 p.m. And in doing so, I acknowledge we're hosting the meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and are joined by people from other lands around the state. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respect to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's Regulations of 2011. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's Regulations 2011, and members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. During the meeting, panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. In the meeting today present are Councillors Linda Balcom, Local Government Member from Shire of Gingin, and Councillor Lincoln Stewart, Local Government Member from Shire of Gingin as well. I'm the presiding member. On my left is Francesca Lafanti, Deputy Presiding Member, and Rob Mullis as Specialist Member. Item 2 on our agenda, apologies, there are none. Item 3, members on leave of absence, there are none. And item 4, noting the minutes of previous meetings, they're all available on the DAP website. Moving into Part B of the Shire of Gingin application. Item 1, I will ask all panel members to signify that they've duly considered all of documentation contained within Part B of the agenda and Part B related information by raising your hand, please. That's unanimous, thank you. Note also that there was an R13 direction response published on the 7th of July 2025. Now, item 2, disclosure of interest. I have 2 disclosures. Councillor Linda Balcom, item 3.1 on the agenda, impartiality interest. Councillor Balcom participated in a prior council meeting where this item was heard, and the DAP Executive Director has given approval to sit and vote on the matter. Councillor Lincoln Stewart also has an impartiality interest. He too participated in the prior council meeting where this item was heard, and I have granted approval to sit and participate and vote on the item. Item 3 on the agenda is the application for meteorological mass and geotechnical investigations over 3 lots in Indian Ocean Drive, Benny's Road in Breton Bay, and in accordance with Standing Orders 2024, we have presentations from Alex Jarvis and Christina Yan. You have 6 minutes combined to make your presentation on the application. Please commence.
Thank you very much, Presiding Member, and good afternoon, panel. So, as you just heard, my name is Alex Jarvis, and I'm a Town Planner at CLE Town Planning and Design. I will speak on behalf of our client Goldwood and requesting the DAP support for the proposal in front of you today. I'll firstly address the planning merits of the proposal before handing over to Goldwyn's Head of Development, Christina, who's just on the screen, who will cover off a few additional points. We reviewed the Shire's Responsible Authority report and support the Shire's assessment and recommendation, including all conditions and advice notes proposed. As the RAR makes clear, the purpose of this application is to support preliminary investigations into a potential wind farm on the site. Should these investigations determine that the site conditions are suitable for a wind farm, this would be subject to a separate development application and assessment process. The proposal being considered by the DAP today relates only to preliminary site investigations. This includes the installation of 3 meteorological masts, or MET masts, which would monitor wind conditions across the site, and geotechnical investigations to assess the ground and soil conditions and confirm if they are suitable to support the foundations of a wind turbine. As set out in the RAR, the proposal is consistent with the planning framework, with all work set back sufficiently from the property boundaries, while the 3 Met masts are non-invasive structures that will not detract from the surrounding rural character of the area, and are no closer than approximately 3 kilometres to the nearest residence. The proposed infrastructure is also considered low impact and allows for the ongoing use of the site for rural purposes. Supporting preliminary investigations into green energy projects is aligned with the Wheatbelt Regional Planning and Infrastructure Framework, which sets a vision for the region of being a leader in innovation with a diverse economic base, as well as the Shire's local planning strategy that seeks to protect rural land from subdivision or other forms of intensive redevelopment. Support for this proposal is also consistent with the state government's Green Energy Approvals Initiative, which seeks to streamline the approval process for green energy projects, encourage investment in the renewable sector, and support the state government's target of net zero by 2050. We therefore encourage the DAP to support this proposal, which will facilitate investigations into a potential green energy project and assist with the state's transition to more sustainable forms of energy. I'll now just hand over to Christina to make some further comments. Just before I do, sorry, Presiding Member, we've also just got a few general comments on the R13 that came through. Are we able to go to them straight after, or we've got to wait for questions?
I'll leave it up to you.
Okay, thank you. We might roll straight into that after your deputation, Christina.
Thanks, Alex. I'd like to thank those who made submissions through this process. Goldwind has been contributing to the renewable energy transition in Australia since 2009, with the installation of wind turbine technology at approved wind farms developments on the eastern electricity grid and off-grid in WA. Goldwind's application is requesting to undertake the investigation activities for the feasibility of a wind farm located near Breton Bay. With best practice development during the process, we have and will continue to inform the community of any potential wind farm developments that could prove feasible, inform the state of ongoing study activities for planning the wind farm, including outlining the benefits to the energy security and the grid infrastructure investment. And we consult with local stakeholders to seek their feedback and understand the potential impacts and opportunities. The works of the Met mast and geotechnical activities will include the following. Each mast is expected to require 4 truck movements for delivery of the mast sections, plus 4 concrete truck deliveries. Daily access outside of this would be via up to 2 light vehicle 4-wheel drives. And dust may be expected, but it's anticipated it will be no different to usual agricultural vehicle use. Met mast installation will be staged and can be completed over approximately 3 weeks. In terms of geotechnical investigations, it will also be staged around farming activities and would require 4-wheel drive movements with tray-mounted drills to access each test pit site, an excavator via a low-level loader, or another drill at each test bore location. The meteorological and soil data that we would gain from undertaking these proposed activities is essential to the wind farm feasibility assessment and design process, and purely for that reason. We collect data, wind data, soil conditions, and we use the Met mast to install bat detectors to assess flight heights and species types. With it, we will be better placed to respond to the questions received from the community, such as how many turbines and what will the impacts be. And in collaboration, we would develop design inputs if a wind farm were feasible. Back to you, Alex.
Thank you. And that just covers off some of the former interaction queries. Just a couple of other ones with the presiding member. Just around landscape and visual screening, we certainly sort of appreciate that comment around having to provide some screening, but given the mast at 130 metres high, we don't think that is likely going to be feasible, so we request that that effect is not considered. The community engagement protocol query, we're certainly sort of already undertaken community engagement for this proposal in accordance with the statutory requirements of the application, but as Christina has already touched on, should there be a bigger project in the future here, that will be a community consultation that we need to be undertaken, and we hope that gets done in conjunction with Shire Gingin as well. And just the last one around bushfire risk response. From our perspective, this no habitable structure is proposed as part of this application, so we don't think bushfire management is a relevant requirement. Most of the site's actually not bushfire prone. There's only a few areas on the site that are actually considered bushfire prone. So I think with that in mind, and questions. Back to my initial deputation, support for the Shire's recommendation as proposed with no changes. We also would be happy to support attachment 1 within the REG 13, which is the updated conditions and advice notes, just with the exception of condition 3, which relates back to bushfire management. We will be happy to accept the balance of modified conditions from the Shire in that respect. And that's everything from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Panel members, do any of you have questions of the proponents and their presenters? Yes, Francesca.
Thank you. I have a question regarding aviation. I know your report by name of the company talked about the visions and the impact of the flight movements. And they did talk about both Mast 1 and Mast 3 having some movement needed to ensure that they met both flight path and the movement of the flights in that area. Can you clarify for me, essentially, what change did you make a change to respond to that? I just want to get clarity about the response to those concerns and in particular those movements, as well as the conditions relating to CASA and Department of Defence. So I have an interest in understanding essentially is the extent to which the masks will impact the movement, the flight path.
Yeah, I should take that. So as the
sorry, can I get your name?
Oh, sorry, Dean Roberts, Government Australia.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
So as a part of the submission that CASA provided as well, and what that kind of related to was going up the coast near Lancelin is an area called VR4, which is Visual Flight 4, and the report talks to the bottom mast, I think it's mast 1 on the plan, which is a 2-mile radius from the coastline, and that mast is in its mast 1 location is outside of Visual Flight 4, outside of that boundary. So CASA, through their submission, has advised that there isn't an issue because it's outside of that zone where flights are to be taken by a visual route which is following the coastline. The reason why that specific area is there, and it's a unique situation to do with around the Department of Defence base and the no-fly zone that is around the Department of Defence. And that's why there's this route that follows the coastline, which sits 2 miles back from the coastline. The Department of Defence, through their submission, also referenced the standard notification processes, which then adds a high structure to the flight database, which then makes those objects mapped. They also provided an additional requirement for a light to be installed that is suitable for vision under night vision goggles, which is essentially a red light.
So, the report that I've got in front of me, it refers to Mask 1, and the recommendation included in that report, now just for your own reference, it is revision 4, page 13 of the report. I think it's electronic page 73, but just it refers to Mask 1 on Route 4. But it says, notwithstanding the above, even with the 80-metre clearance, aircraft could be flying in very close proximity to Mast 1, which poses a high risk to flight safety. In the context of what you've just said, Are you saying that this report prepared precedes the comments of CASA and Department of Defence, and those protocols they're satisfied? Notwithstanding this report says there's a high risk of flight safety.
Yeah, this report has been reviewed by CASA and provided as a part of their submission. This report produced by Oricon.
Yep.
It's not produced by CASA.
Yep.
So it's all CASA's opinion. Knowing that this is in the report,
Mhm.
that it's outside the bound. Well, and their division kind of reflects that.
CASA and they both didn't object to the proposal and they were providing this information through the consultation process.
Yes, they did have some provisions they put in there. I read through what they've said, but I wanted to just get clarity in that context. It's interesting that that report highlighted a concern. Did you pursue it further with this organisation following CASA commentary, or you're satisfied that
Well, I mean, they
CASA?
provided comment on that and they're satisfied. That's fine.
That was my question.
Okay, thank you. Any other panel members wish to ask questions of the proponents? Yes.
Yes. So the development plan showed a quarry. However, it's not described in the report. Can you clarify that the quarry is not part of the proposal?
Yeah, that's just, if you've got to clarify, that's just existing outside the part of the proposal.
So it's existing construction on site.
Okay. No further questions?
General Manager, and what's the
Yes.
proposed internal site access along existing tracks?
Yeah, it's not Benny's Road.
On Kings Road?
Yeah, existing tracks where the property boundaries intersect. Yeah.
I presume there'll be some additional tracks to the tower locations that aren't there now.
There's no proposed additional works for tracks, but they'll be traversing across farmland.
Yes. Okay.
And that's the same with the geotech investigation. They've got all driving out to do that.
That's the movements provided there, but they're very frequent, so.
Yep.
Like
No point in
there's no
putting
point
tracks
creating,
in.
temporary tracks to this mast.
And during the maintenance period and monitoring period, they'll just use like 4-wheel drives or whatever
That's right.
across the paddocks.
Not dissimilar to sort of agricultural use.
Okay. All right. Yes, Councillor.
I do have a question, please.
Yes.
It's in regards to bushfire management mitigation. So the access to the Met Mast will be via developed or gravel roads or dirt roads. They won't just be through the paddocks, or will it be through a clearing? I ask that because of vehicle movement bans and how you're going to maintain or carry out maintenance on the Met Mast if there's a vehicle movement ban that restricts driving through the paddock, makes that dual access similar to that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, if there was a vehicle movement ban or similar ban that prevents activities inside construction, or maintenance activities, they'll be a part of the constructed the plan. Will be submitted how to approach that when those vehicle movement bans are in place. That they're going to be respected.
Okay, that's it. All right. Well, this is-
Possible to add to that response, Madar Butri?
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, General Manager, Development, Goldwind Australia. I just want to, I guess, clarify in terms of the Met Mast, once it is installed, and as Christina mentioned, we expect that a Met Mast can be installed within a period of 3 weeks. There is very little maintenance required to a Met Mast, typically once in the first 6 months to make sure that the tension on the guy wires are appropriate. And then every 2 years after that is literally a 1-day inspection to check that the anchors are still, adequately operating for that civil compliance. Further to that, the timing of that maintenance and the installation in itself is flexible, and so obviously that would be adjusted to suit the conditions. So with regards to the question, particularly fire risk and that consideration, we would be seeking to install those masts outside of high fire risk times to ensure the safety of our people and those around. Thank you.
Okay, yes, councillor.
I do have a follow-up question, thank you. If access is limited to monthly, 6 monthly, how do you propose that you would monitor environmental flora and fauna damage or bird strike and bat strike on the site if there's no regular access to the site?
A bird strike and bat strike is not something that is typically required or expected for the installation of a met mast. The risks associated with a stationary met mast are considered very low. There is ongoing bird and bat monitoring at the site as part of the early investigation work to support a potential wind farm development, which would be subject to a separate application. And so I guess more broadly, there is, separate to this application, some early investigation work happening from a bird and bat perspective. The met masts themselves, as Christine explained, are proposed to include the installation of bat monitoring equipment, primarily a pulley and shackle system, which during the monitoring period will allow for a bat monitoring device to be hoisted up the met mast to therefore further inform the future assessment and impact assessment associated with a potential wind farm, which would be subject to a separate application.
Yes.
Thank you. Can you please confirm if the guy wires on the met mast will have bat and bird deterrents on the wires?
Guy wires do not typically, and I'm not aware of any other wind farm that has such deterrents as part of their installation. However, in saying that, the guy wires themselves will have aviation marker balls on the outermost guys, as per the design shown in the application. They will also have a colour, a mark, what do you call it, like a markings at the base of the anchor points, and up the top third of the mast itself will include varying colours, red and white, to obviously primarily to identify those met masts for any planes flying in the area, but this would also support, I guess, any additional visual cues for birds. Bats have, using echolocation, are expected to avoid such guylines. And as I said, these are considered very low risk compared to, moving parts. There are no moving parts. It's stationary, and this is not, something that has been done on any other wind farm or any other met mast, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any further questions of the presenters? You have something further to say?
Yes. We will also be seeking further advice from our avian expert, and we'll seek to incorporate, as relevant, any additional measures that may be recommended by our avian specialist, if they deem so, and those would be covered in the construction and decommissioning management plan, which is proposed as one of those mitigation, as one of the conditions recommended in the RAR.
Thank you. All right. No further questions. All right. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is the discussion on.
Do you want to go to the Shire?
Oh, sorry. Come on over and we'll ask questions.
Sorry, might have to get you guys to.
You might have to move around a little bit. Sorry, James. Do we have any questions of the Shire officer here? Or do you wish to make some comment on anything you've heard to date?
Thank you, member. I don't.
Okay.
I take the report as read and just have to answer any questions.
Okay. Panel members, any questions of Mr. Bayliss? No?
I've got some questions.
Yes.
Could you just add a few more comments in relation to the after the team? Have a series of questions asked of you. You provided us information about those that you think have planning context and those that don't. I'm interested in your comments more particularly about those that don't, particularly in relation to the environmental matters that we also referred to the 0.1 black cockatoo bat raptor mitigation, risk mitigation. Can you talk a little bit further, not just about your response, but in here you talk about the referral process, and there is not, you have not undertaken a referral process in relation to those to CA. Just could you speak a little bit further about that in the context of this and your assessment of that?
Yeah, so my initial view is that the DBCA were a better position to provide technical advice around studies. At the time of the assessment, they weren't viewed as a relevant stakeholder. As one of the presenters said, it's a stationary wire. It's not something that typically expect to see strikes with. Shire's experience. With the benefit of hindsight, we were aware that this would potentially be raised for the sake of, I suppose, thoroughness. We'd probably refer to these findings. Notwithstanding that, still form the view that the applicant proposal does identify that if illuminated appropriately, will have mitigation measures. For if that provides any additional information of what I've already said, that's the Shire's.
It was, yes, was really trying to get an understanding about your decision for referral agencies or alternatively not referring. So thank you for that.
Any further? Yes, Councillor.
I do have a question. It's in relation to the guy wires and the met mass. There was a study done by aviation collisions with guide towers in North America in 2005 that said, while met masts are temporary and do not involve blades, they can cause significant ecological harm. This is well documented in both international and Australian literature. Guy met masts, due to their thin, hard-to-see cables, are among the most dangerous vertical structures for foraging and migrating birds and bats. Nocturnal and large-bodied species, black cockatoos, owls, and microbats are especially at risk of collision mortality, particularly in low light, fog, or wind turbulence. Strike-related fatalities have already been recorded in Australia at mast and turbine sites and have disproportionate impact on species with slow reproduction or localised populations. BirdLife WA and Murdoch University have confirmed 3 nest sites and overnight roosting sites to the north, the east, and the south of this location, and that we have one of the largest black cockatoo flocks in the state. I guess my direct question is, do you believe that we as a Shire have mitigated or everything's been done to manage and minimise bird and bat fatality or strike?
Through the chair, I think that an assessment and conditions need to reflect every proportion to the scale of the bill in question. Again, I think that specific queries around mention of the studies that mentioned in clarified by the CA. Shire on face value accepted the applicant's proposal, which did outline that guide-wires would be fitted with market laws and visibility solutions to improve safety for people. Accepted that. So technical queries, technical agencies.
I've got a query. I mean, that you've suggested a condition that if the applicants submit a fauna management plan, and you've said in there the Shire of Gingin for approval on advice from relevant state agencies. And what you're saying is that once it's submitted, you will refer that to state agencies. Now, they may come back and say they're very concerned about that. Now, the applicants haven't objected to that particular condition, but you haven't objected to that condition, I don't think.
So we haven't objected to attachment 1.
Sorry, if I could just clarify. I understand the applicant was referring in his comment that it was did not object to the modified conditions only as contained in attachment 1, not the front.
On that one.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, you've suggested that, and do you acknowledge that that could create a hiatus with the application if that condition gets up?
Yeah, look, through the chair, the Reg 13, I was, as I outlined, I took some liberty to try and identify the underlying, I suppose, concerns that were coming through that request. And clearly there was some concern around fauna, and hence the condition was crafted. I don't actually recommend that condition in my attachment.
Yeah.
It was more an attempt to provide comment to the Reg 13.
Yeah.
Obviously, the panel want to know Shire's views or some comments around that.
Mm-hmm.
My response was there's potentially a condition that could be crafted to address those concerns, but I haven't recommended that.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Any further questions? Yes.
I have a question
Thank
in
you.
relation to condition 9 in attachment 1. I know they don't line up with the conditions at the front of the agenda. In it, you refer to the applicant to demonstrate to the Shire the as constructed details have been provided to Air Service Australia and the development adheres to their respective conventions. Are you referring to the provisions as contained in CAS's response about the treatments?
Through the chair, that's correct.
And is there a particular reason why you didn't specify those treatments? The one I'm looking at is the top 13 painted alternative contrasting bands, wall markers, and the high visibility flag sleeves. My question is in the context of that clarity of condition, really. That's kind of where I'm getting to.
Through the chair, look, point taken, I understand the clarity and certainty of that condition. I think holistically, given the solutions received, consultation will take that's something. Appreciate the condition. Explicitly state that. I suppose to some extent allowing flexibility through the discussion between.
Those treatments, are they reflected on the plans?
Through the chair, I believe in drawing it.
Any further questions of Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Yes.
The applicant has said that they accept the conditions proposed in response to the R13 with the exception of condition 3, which is providing a revised site plan to the internal access roads, etc. Thoughts of the Shire in terms of that condition, the applicant's position on that condition?
Yeah, through the chair again, with the Reg 13, I was trying to understand precisely what the intent around the bushfire considerations were, and I understood that interpreted was that it was around ensuring there's sufficient access and egress. Shire does experience a lot of bushfire scenario. So if emergency services need to access the site, they have a range of different vehicles to use. So I didn't see that the owners for the proponent outline until the site plan. I do have concerns that they'll be before that. Seven, I really didn't see the task to identify internal access roads. That's why it went on. It came off. I don't see that it's particularly burden of whether or not it's necessarily acceptable to the site or benefit Shire and the effects.
I just have another question in that regard. I'm presuming there are access tracks through the property at the moment, and I'm assuming the proponents would utilise those tracks where possible because they're formed formally or informally, and then take the straightest path to where the masts are going. So once again, it probably wouldn't be too difficult to delineate the majority of the access tracks on site, an aerial photography, and then maybe delineate a preferred track so that they don't go crisscrossing. I'm presuming they won't just willy-nilly go across the paddocks and interrupt any agricultural pursuits. I don't know whether there's any cropping or just grazing on the site.
Yeah, look through the chair. I think that's my presumption. It's not explicitly stated. Hence the suggested condition. I don't see why there would be strong opposition by.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
I have another question based on the same, I guess, aspect. Is the Shire of Gingin previously rejected other applications around vehicle movement concerns through bushfire prone areas of the year, summer, for example? If there's no specific tracks and there's maintenance required to be carried out on met masts or checks for aviation strike and things like that, would you suggest that it may be appropriate for just a track to be even graded or road to each mast that is then definitive and it lowers the risk of bushfire or grass fire started from the vehicle movement?
Through the chair, my view is if there's vehicle movement bans, they can't access the legislative requirements to some bushfires happen. If there's a vehicle movement ban, they can't go on. That's my position.
Thank you. Any further questions?
No.
If not, now we can move on to the item itself, and we may come back with some queries as we need to. So in order that we may commence discussion on it as a panel, I need a mover and seconder to proceed. Do I have a mover for the recommendation in the responsible authority report? Yes, Councillor Falcon moves, seconded by Member Lafanti. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Falcon, you wish to speak to the item, please.
I think it's a very good report, RRA report, an application. It is for the met masts, not for wind farm. We need to look at this application as it is and as planning responsibilities that allow to it. So at this time, I don't see a great problem with this application. I do understand some of the R13 suggestions, and I take the Shire's officer's report as read and understood.
Thank you. Member Lafanti, please.
Thank you. I am supportive of the proposal and I'm satisfied that the unlisted land use as classified as unlisted use is appropriate and it's both appropriate and compatible with the general zone objectives and the planning framework, including LPS 9 and its locational context. I have duly considered the solutions that have been provided and I'm satisfied that the concerns raised in relation to rural landscape traffic movements such as the amenity associated with dust and bushfire have been appropriately addressed. And in terms of aviation safety, I'm satisfied both in the discussion during today's meeting as well as the material provided by Shire officers, CASA and Department of Defence, that these are appropriately addressed. With regard to concerns raised, and I echo the concerns already been stated by the mover, that I don't accept that this is a proposal is a precursor to something else for our determination. I note the applicant has indicated the purpose of it being to do investigative considerations, but I concur with the officer's comments that this development is a standalone proposal for us to consider, and accordingly I am maintaining or limiting my comments in relation to the proposal before us and not any other proposal that might come after, noting that the Shire officers that have quite clearly indicated that any future application will be considered on its merit against the planning framework. I'm satisfied that the masks are non-invasive on site and that they're appropriately cited. I'm also satisfied with the comments that have been given by the applicant in relation to the nature and type of potential landscaping or screening in the relevance of this proposal. Again, the plans show us the type of mask includes imagery of mask visuals from various distances. So I'm satisfied that that is appropriate. In relation to some of the environmental concerns, I understand those concerns and I note the material that I have been able to follow up in relation to things like the hardy black cockatoo. A lot of the concerns are raised around habitat protection, both in terms of feeding and roosting. And I understand from the material provided from us, essentially the area the subject to this application is essentially primarily cleared. I note the concerns really have been provided regarding the guide wires and the comments that have been given in relation to both aviation as well as bird avian movements, including some of the treatments for visibility. So I am supportive of the proposal at this juncture. If I may, I would like to consider some amendments.
Yes.
My amendment 1 is to modify condition 7 as written, using the language that is in the attachment 1 from the R13 for the minute take. It actually does refer to condition 8. I note that that is currently condition 7 in the RDAP that we have on the table, and I am proposing to move the language as contained in what is condition 8 as a modified condition 7 for this application.
And that's the condition that says on expiration of the meteorological.
Condition 7, the one that we've got on the table, which is condition
yes.
7, relates to condition 8
on attachment 1.
So I'm moving that language as a modified condition 7.
Thank you. All right, moving that. Do I have a seconder? Yes, Member Carlos.
My reasons for the moving this modification, I think that it has provided a lot more clarity, addressed some of the concerns raised, and provides significant clarity around what is expected in relation to the construction and decommission management plan. I also note that there's been no issues raised in relation to the sort of matters that we should be taking into consider further in this from the applicant and the applicant's team, and that's an appropriate modification to clearly identify the requirements.
Thank you. Member Carlos, you wish to speak to the item? A seconder?
Yes, agree in terms of providing great clarity.
Thank you. Any other panel member wish to speak either for or against the recommendation or amendment? Not? then I support it and I'll put it to a vote. You wish to close the vote? If not, all those in favour of the amendment, amendment number 1? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to move amendment 2. It is a new condition. The new condition will is taken from the additional material provided in R13. It is shown as condition 10 in that additional material, and it is here as the
Regarding the signage plan,
yes. It's a new condition.
okay, so we're moving that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Lewis.
My reasons for, thank you, my reasons for moving it is it's reasonable to provide this material for the, given the concerns that have been raised and the neighbours.
Sorry, Councillor Stewart. I said Councillor Lewis.
Oh,
Sorry.
This condition is suitable, is appropriate in this context. It provides a key connection to the proposal. It's directly related to the proposal, and it provides an opportunity for concerns raised by applicants to be community to be identified to the proponent, and matters can be appropriately addressed. It also provides a level of comfort and consideration of the concerns that have been raised. Many of those have been raised as a potential concern, and this provides the opportunity for those to be realised, those to be clarified through the timeframe of this interim development.
Councillor Stewart, please speak to the other.
I have nothing further to add.
Okay. Any other panel member wish to speak to the amendment? If not, do you wish to close the vote? Okay, I'll put the amendment number 2. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Any further amendments?
No further amendments. I have no further comments. I've already made my comments about that.
Okay, all right. Rob, did you wish to speak to, who's the seconder again? Councillor, any other panel member wish to speak to the item? If not,
Yeah, also
Oh,
some
yes.
motions.
yes,
So currently condition 4, the battery energy storage system site plan is not from public approval. For clarity, I suggest that the BESS and quarry as delineated on the site plan is not from public approval.
sorry, what was the amendment?
So amending condition 4, which
Yeah.
currently refers to the BESS as delineated on the site plan, not forming part of the approval.
Yeah.
Just to clarify that the BESS and the quarry as delineated on the site plan does not form part of this approval. Clear that in terms of what's included.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Yes. Okay. Further discussion on that, member counts?
Comments as the-
Yes,
seconder?
yes, a seconder. You can
I'm comfortable with the minor modification by adding those words and quarry. It has been clarified in today's meeting that the applicant has clarified that that does not form part of this approval, and therefore it just reflects what has been confirmed in today's meeting.
Okay, any other member wish to speak to the item? The amendment number 3? If not, I'll put the item to a vote. All those in favour to amend condition 4? Thank you. All right. Any further discussion on the recommendation as amended?
I'd like to motion to add an advice note.
Okay, amendment 4.
So noting the comments around burden bats, I agree with the view from the Shire that the level of risk to burden bats is low in this case, and there's no need to include those conditions as led to formal management plans. However, for the benefit of the proponent and advice note that the applicant needs to be aware of the requirements under the Biodiversity Conservation Act 2016 and the Environmental Protection Act 1986 to flora and fauna.
Okay. All right, do you have the wording for that? Yes, okay. Do I have a second to that? Yes. Have a second. Okay. Rob, do you wish to speak further to it?
Simply to acknowledge the risk that has been raised through the consultation and informally include as an advice note that the needs to consider these other pieces of legislation.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Member Lafanti.
I would concur with the comments that have been made. I note that an advice note is not as its name suggests, advice. It's not a formal condition, and the benefit of having an advice note just does raise the awareness of those other obligations that sit beyond the planning framework.
Thank you. Member wish to speak to the amendment? If not, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Anything further? No one else wish to speak to the item? All right, well, I'll put the recommendation with 4 amendments for approval. All those in favour? That's unanimous. The application is approved as amended. Okay, moving on the agenda. Item 4 in this part, Form 2 DAP application there are. Item 5, SAP reconsideration there are. Part B of the agenda, item 1, SAT application and Supreme Court appeals. They are all listed. And item 2 on this part of the agenda is closure of the meeting. And that is close it at 1:52 p.m. Thank all of the panel members, applicants, Barris, thank you very much, and the Secretariat.